Hi there, it's Hannah the Austin Duck and I'm back with a brick stitch tutorial with a slight twist. So this is not a regular brick stitch, this is 2-drop brick stitch, and that is where we pick up 2 beads or more on each step. I do already have a Christmas tree tutorial for brick stitch, but that tree we used just regular brick stitch, and because of that, to get the length, the tree goes out sort of much wider, whereas this stitch gives us a sort of taller, slimmer tree. I'm using size 11 Delica beads, and I've got a green, a red, a silver and just a bronze for the trunk. So I've made myself a pattern to work from, and this pattern shows really clearly the sort of the double blocks of beads that we're going to be picking up, and I've obviously got my needle and thread ready to go. So we're going to start at the top of the pattern here, and we're going to pick up both of these beads at the same time, and then to get us started we're also going to pick up these 2 beads as well. So that's 2 greens followed by a green and a red. So there's the first 4 beads on my needle, and I'm just going to pull those down my thread and make sure I leave a tail thread. There we go. This thread doesn't need to be very long, it doesn't make a very big tree, so this is about I think 27 inches long. Obviously if you want to make bigger trees you're going to need a longer thread. But now all I'm going to do is take my needle, back up those first 2 green beads and pull like that, and that'll make those beads sort of sit side by side. They do want to sort of move around a little bit, but if you wiggle them around they will sit nicely. There we go, like that. So now I'm going to go back up through these 2 beads again, so it's the red and the green this time, partly just because I do want to reinforce how they're sitting, and then because I want to add a little silver sort of star loop at the top, I'm just going to go ahead and pick up one of my silver beads and take that down my needle and thread. And then I'm going to go back down those 2 green beads again and pull. There we go. And now you can see I've got the start of that little loop at the top, or the star, and my beads are sitting nicely. And I do find at this point it's best not to over tighten the beadwork because it kind of wants to pull those beads out of shape. So we're now exiting out of the bottom of this green bead here, and we're ready to move on to the next row. And the next row starts with a red and then a green, and then we have a green and a silver. And you need to think about the order in which you're going to pick the beads up. So because we've got to pick all 4 up at the same time, because the row is extending, so we need to pick up the first sort of 2 sections to begin with. We're going to start with the red and then the green, and then because that green is nearest to that silver, sort of if you were to go back up, you have to pick the silver and then the green, so you have to really think about the order in which you're picking your beads up. So there's my beads, my red, my green, my silver, and then my other green. I'm just going to take those down the thread. And I've got these bridging threads here, and I'm just going to take my needle under one of them, or you can use both if you want, but I prefer to just use one, like that. So this is just like normal brick stitch now. And pull. You might need to just encourage those beads to flip over a little bit and pull, and then we're going to go back up through the green like that. Once I've tightened it up, I'm just going to go into that silver as well. So it's the same as a normal brick stitch, only you're having to work on 2 beads at a time. I'm just going to pull those to tighten them up a little bit, and you can now see that they're sitting on top of the previous 2 beads. So I'm just going to come in now and pick up the last 2 beads in the row, which are these 2 green beads. I've got those beads on my needle, and we don't have any of those little threads to use, so we're just going to find a thread that's going sort of between the beads here and take our needle through there instead and pull through. And then we're going to go back up those 2 beads again and sort of just gently tighten them like that. And now you can see that they're just sitting off to the side like that. So we're exiting out the bottom of this green bead here, and all the way down we're increasing. So each time we start a new row, we'll need to pick up 2 sort of sections to begin with. So we're now going to work our way down, and we start off with 2 greens, and then we've got a green and a red. So we're going to pick up the 2 greens to start with, and then because we have to flip our beading over to make them sit side by side, we're going to have to pick up the red straight after that green, and then pick up another green as well. So there's our beads added. I'm just going to take those down, and I'm now going to find that bridging thread again that's going sort of between the beads on that prior row. Pull, and then I'm going to take my needle back up into the green and then the red, just like that, and pull through. Like I say, I'm not over tightening. When I tie my knots, I'll sort of make sure the beading's nice and firm, but for now I'm just lightly pulling those tight. So we're now exiting out of this red bead at the bottom, and we now need to pick up this next section of 2. So we just need 2 greens, and then I'm going to follow it on with the end of the row, which is a green and a silver. There's my next beads, and I'm just going to take my needle under that bridging thread and pull. And I'm going to go back up like that and pull through. And now they've been added. So now I need to finish this row with my green and my silver. I'm just going to take those down. So now I'm going to take my needle under that thread that's going between those beads and pull through. And then I'm going to go back up through both of those beads again. And just lightly tighten it like that to get them to sit alongside the other beadwork. So we are now exiting out the bottom of this green bead, and you can see it's growing really quickly because we're picking up 2 beads or 4 beads at a time. The pattern grows very quickly when you're beading. So the next row has 2 greens, and then we're going to do sort of it's red and a green, but we're going to pick up 2 greens followed by another green and then the red. There's my beads. So I'm just going to take my needle under that bridging thread again and pull through. And just, you know, you might need to just encourage them a little bit to sit where you want them to. And then I'm going to take my needle and we're going to go back up through the red and just one of those greens again. There we go. And that's now started the next row. We're exiting out this bottom green here, and we're ready to complete the rest of the row. So we've got a green and a silver followed by 4 greens. So because we're exiting out the bottom here, and we're obviously going to turn our thread and needle over this way to use the bridging thread, the next bead we need to pick up is a silver, and then we'll pick up the green. So I've got my beads, and I'm just going to use that bridging thread there and pull. And then take our needle back up through there. And now we're ready to add another pair of green beads. So there's my 2 green beads. We're just going to go through that last bridging thread there. And back up through both of them. And now we're ready to add the last 2 green beads. I've run out of my bridging threads, so I'm just going to take my needle through to catch the thread that's sitting between those beads and pull through. And I'm going to take my needle back up both of those green beads. That's my tail thread to secure them in place. There we go. We are exiting out the bottom of this green bead here, so we're going to move on to the next row. So we've got 2 greens and then we've got another green and a silver. I've gone ahead and picked up my beads, and we're going to take our needle under that bridging thread and pull through. Like that. And we're going to go back up through the silver and the green. And pull through. And there we go. Now we're going to move on. It's easier to do this in little sections because otherwise we're going to lose track of what beads we're adding, because there's quite a few beads each time. So we're going to go ahead now. We've got 2 green beads to pick up. We're exiting out the bottom here. So we've got these 2 greens and then we've got a red and a green as well. So I've just picked up my 2 greens to begin with, and we're just going to go through that bridging thread and back up through both of the green beads. There we go, like that, and pull. And now, because we're exiting out the bottom of the bead, so the bead that we next put on is going to be the one that sits next to this green, and that's going to be our red. So I've just gone ahead and picked up a red and then my green, and go through those bridging threads again, like that. And then secure in place by going back up through both of those beads. There we go. Now we just have these 4 beads to finish this row. So we've got 2 greens and then a green and a silver. So here's my 2 green beads. I'm just going to go into that bridging thread and pull. I'm going to go back up through both of them. I've got the last 2 beads in this row, a green and a silver. And I'm going to take my needle under that thread that's going between those beads there and pull through. I'm now going to take my needle back up those 2 beads. There we go. And that row is finished. So we're on the final section of this tree, and we are starting off with 2 green beads, and then we've got a green and a red, but we're going to pick up 2 greens followed by a red and then a green. And there's my beads, and we're just going to go through that bridging thread there. And we're going to go back up through those 2 beads and pull. There we go. The next section along are these 4 green beads, and we'll go ahead as well and just look at this one. So this is a green and a silver. So I've just picked up my next 2 green beads. I'm going to go through that bridging thread and back up through both of those beads. I've picked up my next 2 green beads. I'm just going to go under that bridging thread, and then we're going to go back up those beads to secure in place like that and pull. There we go. I've picked up the next 2 beads, which is a silver and a green, and because the silver is going to sit alongside this green at the bottom, you have to pick the silver bead up first. And I'm going to go under those threads again and pull through. And now we're going to go back up and pull. There we go. We are now just going to finish off these last 4 beads here. So we've got a green and a red, and after we've added those, we're going to pick up just 2 green beads to add on to the end. There's my first 2 beads, and I'm just going to add those on. I'm going to go back up through them again and pull. And now I've got my last 2 green beads on this tray. I'm just finding that thread that's going between the previous row and those beads, and I'm going to go back up through both of those beads again and pull. There we go. I'm still being careful not to really over tighten. And that's sort of the tree section complete. We now need just to move along to add our tree trunk. So I'm just going to turn my beading so I can see where I'm going. So I'm just going to take my needle straight up into those 2 beads that are along from where I'm exiting and pull. I'm now just going to jump across the next 2 beads along and take my needle down there, and now I'm in the position to add my trunk. So I've just gone ahead and picked up 2 of my bronze coloured beads, and I'm going to take the needle under the next bridging thread along from where I'm exiting. So it's the sort of the 3rd bridging thread in, like that, and pull through. You're going to want to see that thread going up on the outer edge like that, because that's the only way to get them to sit properly in place, is to have that thread on the outside. So you're going to go back up through both of those beads again, if I can get them. There's 1 and then 2, and pull. There we go, and you want those to sit nicely on top of each other like that, and you can just see my grey thread running alongside the edge. If they seem a bit unstable for a minute, that's fine. We're going to add another 2 now. So I've just picked up 2 more of the same colour brown bead, and I'm going to take my needle into the next bridging thread along and pull. Like that. And I want to make sure that these are nice and secure in place, so I'm just going to take my needle back up or back down in to those beads and pull through. And again, that will mean that we can see that thread on the outer edge, but it does help reinforce the position and secure them nicely in place. And now I'm just going to take my needle back up into the tree a little bit, just because I want to make sure that those beads are sitting firmly in place for a second before we add the little star loop at the top. So that's the basic tree completed. Before I tie my knots, I'm just going to swap my needle off this sort of working thread and pop it onto my tail thread. Right, so I've got my needle on my tail thread, and I'm just going to take the needle through that silver bead at the very top, and now I'm going to go ahead and pick up 3 more silver beads, and we're just going to take the needle back into that silver bead again, but sort of from the opposite direction, so that when we pull through, those beads will form a loop. And I just want to reinforce that now, so I'm going to go back through all of those beads again, like that. I'm going to go through that silver bead at the bottom as well and pull through, and just, you know, really tighten that. You can either then just use this to hang directly from an earring hook, or you can add a jump ring at the top to add as well. And now we're ready to tie our knots, and I have found it best and easiest to tie your knots all the way down the edge, and to tie them between these clusters of 2 beads. I found it really helped to sort of make the beadwork a little bit firmer, which I like. So I've just gone through that green bead there. I'm just going to take my needle sort of under the thread that's going between those two beads. I'm going to pull to make a loop, take my needle through the loop and pull, and now I'm going to take my needle down the next bead along like that and pull, and that knot will disappear between those beads. And I'm just going to continue that all the way down the edge, and then I'll use my other thread and I'll knot up on the other side as well. And when you're done, you just cut the excess thread off. So I'm going to go away and do that, and I'll come back to you in a minute. There are our finished earrings. So I'm not sure if I mentioned, the pattern is available on my blog, which I will link below in the description if anyone wants to go and grab that. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it was fun to do something slightly different with the brick stitch, and I shall see you again very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.